There are a lot of multiplayer games that you can play for hundreds of hours. These are games with bigger maps, more weapons, better graphics with bigger budgets, and yet somehow Helldivers 2 still feels like something most of these games simply cannot replicate. Helldivers 2 isn't just a shooter, it is a co-op game, and it definitely isn't just about 4 people running around shooting bugs for 30 minutes. Helldivers 2 is one of those rare games where the best moments aren't necessarily the moments developers designed. There are the moments that happen because you and 3 complete idiots were dropped onto a hostile planet with enough firepower to level Ronaldo and Mbappe's career, and absolutely no guarantee that any of you were going to survive. You can spend 20 minutes executing the perfect mission with coordinated airstrikes that destroy enemy bases, then extract with seconds remaining, and then one of your friends accidentally calls down an orbital strike directly on the squad. Everyone dies, the mission is technically a disaster, and somehow that is the mission everybody remembers. And that is the secret. Helldivers 2 doesn't need to manufacture memorable moments, it creates a playground where memorable moments naturally happen. I mean, let's address the elephant in the room. You all know currently the industry is obsessed with progression bars, seasonal content, battle passes, and engagement metrics, but Arrowhead managed to somehow build a game where real reward isn't even the loot, it is the story you get to tell afterward. And that is why years after its launch, Helldivers 2 remains one of the most unique multiplayer experiences you can ever get. Because when you strip away the memes, the explosions, the propaganda, the bugs, the butts, the squids, and the endless cries for democracy, you find one of the smartest multiplayer game designs of the modern era. Now let's start with something incredibly simple. Helldivers 2 is fun. And no, I don't mean the singers. I mean the actual moment-to-moment act of playing the game is satisfying. Moving feels good, shooting feels good, throwing grenades feels incredibly satisfying, and watching a 500 kg bomb land on a group of enemies, that is absolute cinema. Sure, this sounds obvious, but this is one of the hardest things for a multiplayer game to get right, because the game can have incredible progression, you can even have hundreds of weapons, but if the basic interaction between the player and the game isn't satisfying, none of that actually matters. Helldivers 2 understands that this foundation has to be enjoyable. You aren't waiting for the fun to begin after you unlock the good stuff. The fun is the game. You drop onto a planet, you look around, you hear that sweet godly music, and then you see the environment, and then you realize that you are not the hero, you are expendable. And that single design right there is what many multiplayer games cannot seem to understand. This might be one of the most important things Helldivers 2 does differently. In most shooters, you are powerful because the game wants you to feel like the main character. They make you feel like the chosen one, the person who can walk on water, walk into a room and still find a way to survive. Helldivers 2 looks you in the face and tells you, I'm the captain here. So you are dropped from orbit in a metal bullet, you land on a planet where enormous insects can tear you apart in seconds, robots can vaporize you, the Illuminate technology can turn a battlefield into a nightmare in an instant, and your government doesn't really care if you come back. In fact, Super Earth has unlimited supply of replacements. This creates a completely different relationship with death. Dying isn't necessarily failure, sometimes dying is hilarious, and sometimes it is your fault, true, but let's be honest, most of the time it is actually your teammates' fault. But the important part is that death doesn't stop the experience. You reinforce, you drop back in, and the war continues like you never left. That makes Helldivers 2 feel less like a traditional power fantasy and more like a military comedy where the soldiers are simultaneously terrifying, powerful, and spectacularly incompetent. And that contradiction is brilliant because your character might be disposable, but your squad isn't. This for me is where Helldivers 2 becomes special. The game isn't really about one Helldiver, it is about the whole squad. 4 players, 4 loadouts, 4 different personalities, and 4 people trying to accomplish the same objective while everything around them is actively trying to kill them. You might have one player specializing in anti-tank weapons, another bringing support equipment, someone else carrying a machine gun, and let's be honest, there's always someone in the squad that carries the whole team on their back. I mean, that's always me, but hey, that's beside the point. The game gives you tools, never tells you how to use them, so that level of freedom creates cooperation. Not forced cooperation, but natural cooperation. When you see a teammate struggling with a massive enemy, you fire. Simple as ABC. And when the charger is coming straight towards your friend, you put a rocket into it. And this gameplay design makes you feel like you are not playing alongside them, but actually playing with them. If there is one system that deserves full glaze for Helldivers 2 identity, it is the Stratagem system, because Stratagems aren't just abilities, they are basically an entire second layer of gameplay. You have your weapon, your grenade, and your armor, then you have the abilities call down an absurd amount of military hardware from orbit, airstrikes, orbital bombardments, and some of the most ridiculous pieces of military equipment ever designed in a video game. The difference is that you aren't simply pressing the button and watching flashy animation, you are making a decision right there and then. With an important difference, your stratagems have cooldowns, your ammunition is limited, and the support weapons have limitations. And because of that, every powerful tool comes with a decision. Do you use the Eagle Strike now or save it for later? This might sound insane, but friendly fire is one of the greatest design decisions in Helldivers 2. Unlike SOCOM, where shooting at your AI teammates results to instant death, in Helldivers 2 there is no such nonsense, at least not if your goal is to make cooperation easy. Friendly fire makes cooperation much harder, and it makes mistakes more dangerous. It also makes explosives more terrifying. You cannot just throw a grenade wherever you want or blindly launch an orbital airstrike and expect your teammates to shrug it off. You see, what this means is that every powerful weapon has consequences. The game forces you to respect your teammates, but it also creates comedy, because eventually someone is going to get killed, if not everyone. Helldivers 2 doesn't need scripted comedy like a Mr. Beast video, the mechanics create the comedy. Helldivers 2 is essentially a controlled chaos machine, and I promise you this is much harder to create than it looks. If everything is random, the game becomes frustrating, and if everything is predictable, the game becomes boring. Helldivers 2 sits somewhere in the middle. You understand the rules, but you do not understand exactly what is going to happen. You know the enemies can overwhelm you and you do not have unlimited resources, and you know extraction can become dangerous, but what you do not know is if the next 30 seconds are going to completely be normal, whether the entire planet is about to explode. And this is why so many Helldivers 2 players are so addicted, because there is no way on God's green earth that the same mission you just played feels the same. It all depends on who you are playing with. Another reason why Helldivers 2 stands out is the factions. These aren't simply just different kind of skins, they actually create different kind of combat problems. The Terminates are about overwhelming biological aggression. They swarm, they rush, and they surround you. They turn the battlefield into a close-range frantic fight where you aren't simply just shooting insects. They make sure that you manage your spaces well, you watch your surroundings, and you are trying not to get surrounded. You are dealing with enormous creatures while smaller enemies constantly pressure you. And when you fight automatons, the game feels vastly different. You are dealing with ranged attacks, armor, heavy units, fortifications, structures, and gunfire coming from multiple directions all at once. When fighting the automatons, you have to actually think differently, position differently, and build your loadouts differently. Then you have the Illuminates. Here, the game completely flips the formula. The Illuminate brings advanced technology, unusual enemy behavior, and battlefield threats that can make you rethink how you approach an encounter. Their return in the game's ongoing war has repeatedly been used to disrupt the established rhythm rather than simply just giving players another collection of targets. You see, this isn't just about giving you more targets, it is about giving you a different kind of problem. This is something the Helldivers community has argued about constantly. Balance, weapons, metas, buffs, nerfs, and sure, Helldivers 2 absolutely had its rough patches. There have been balance decisions that frustrated players, and there have been weapons that felt underwhelming. There was even a period where certain loadouts became overwhelmingly popular. The reason people care so much is because the game gives you so many possibilities. When a game gives you one good weapon, nobody cares about balance, but when a game gives you dozens of tools that interact differently with different enemy types, players start experimenting, and that experimentation is why Helldivers 2 remains so undefeated. The best Helldivers aren't necessarily the people with the highest level, they are the people who understand the sandbox perfectly well. Not the tryhards, please. Another area where Helldivers 2 shines and feels ridiculous is the game understands scale. You do not feel like you are fighting enemies inside a tiny arena, you actually feel like you are participating in a grand war. You can look across the battlefield and see explosions happening in the distance. You can hear gunfire, watch enemies emerge from different kind of holes, you can destroy structures, and suddenly the environment becomes part of the story. The battlefield isn't just somewhere you happen to be standing in, it is part of the encounter. But Helldivers 2 understands physical reactions better than anyone else. You see, physical reactions are fun. When you shoot something enormous and watch it stagger, that feels oddly satisfying. When you get ragdolled halfway across the map, it usually feels infuriating, but sometimes it also is hilarious. And when a massive explosion goes off and your entire squad gets thrown around like toys, everybody remembers that because the game makes sure it has physical consequences. You're not simply watching animations play, you're interacting with the chaotic system, and that makes the combat feel unpredictable. Let's talk about the sound design because this is something that gets constantly overlooked. Helldivers 2 sounds incredible. Weapons have weight, the explosions have impact, the enemy sounds are distinct, and the environment has atmosphere. Then there is the music. The soundtrack knows when to make you feel like humanity is fighting for survival, it knows when to escalate, and it knows when to become heroic, and then it completely disappears while you and your friends are silently sneaking towards an objective. The sound design contributes to the illusion that something larger is happening. You are not simply playing a match, you are participating in an operation. This for me is where Helldivers 2 completely separates itself from many generic multiplayer games. The Galactic War is an idea that everyone is participating in one enormous conflict. You aren't just completing isolated missions, you are contributing to something much larger. A major order appears and the community responds. Planet changes hands, factions advance, and players celebrate victory. The community starts talking about the war as if it actually happened, and this is powerful because suddenly the game isn't only about your individual experience. It is about the collective experience. You might log off after an operation, but the war doesn't stop. Other players keep fighting and other squads continue the campaign, but when you return, the galaxy has changed. And that is one of the strongest psychological tricks Helldivers 2 ever pulled off. It manages to make the player feel like they matter. But none of this would work nearly as well without the game's satire. Super Earth is hilarious. The propaganda, the advertisements, the ridiculous terminologies, and the obsession with managed democracy. The idea that every atrocity is somehow a victory for freedom, and even the Helldivers themselves being treated as disposable heroes. The entire universe is absurd, and the game knows this, but this is important because Helldivers 2 isn't trying to tell you Super Earth is actually good. It is inviting you to participate in the joke. You are willingly becoming part of the ridiculous military machine. You scream about democracy, you blow up planets, you salute, you die, and then another Helldiver arrives. It is satire wrapped around multiplayer shooter, and because the joke exists everywhere, the entire game has personality. And this is why the entire Helldivers community isn't just connected by the game, they're connected by the shared experience. Everyone has that one story, the extraction where everybody died, or that time somebody accidentally called down a bomb, or a mission where the entire squad was completely overwhelmed and outnumbered just for them to make an impossible comeback like Barcelona. You see, these moments ultimately become memories, and that is something that progression systems cannot manufacture. Helldivers 2 could have easily become stale by now. Instead, Arrowhead has continued expanding the sandbox. The Illuminates returned, new enemies appeared, vehicles were introduced to the battlefield, and new environments were introduced. The game even expanded beyond its original platform footprint, with the Xbox Series S and X joining the PS5 and the PC in 2005, while crossplay remains supported. And in 2026, Arrowhead has continued pushing the game forward, with Cyberstan becoming a major battlefield. The live service game doesn't survive simply by adding contents. Eventually, you have to improve the foundation, and Arrowhead has done that multiple times. But the crazy part is, Helldivers 2 doesn't need to be perfect to be unmatched. In fact, some of the imperfections are part of why people love this game. The game can be janky sometimes, the physics go insane, and sometimes your teammate kills you. But that unpredictability is what gives the game personality. A perfectly controlled multiplayer game can become sterile, but Helldivers 2 isn't sterile. It is messy, chaotic, and occasionally frustrating, but one thing it is alive. Now, bear with me guys, you might think I am overstating explosions, but really I am not. This is because Helldivers 2 understands spectacle. You see, modern games have become obsessed with making everything bigger, bigger maps, bigger worlds, bigger stories, but bigger doesn't automatically mean better. Helldivers 2 makes explosions meaningful because they affect the battlefield and create this cinematic war feel. When you call down an orbital strike, you are not just watching fireworks, you are changing the situation. Enemies disappear, structures are destroyed, and your squad has to move. The battlefield opens up and sometimes you accidentally kill yourself. For me, this is interactive spectacle, and this is far more satisfying than simply watching a cinematic explosion. But why do other games struggle to copy this? Now we have reached the real question. If Helldivers 2 is so successful, why doesn't anybody just make another one? Because you cannot simply copy the surface. Sure, you can make a third-person shooter, add 4-player co-op, and add orbital airstrikes, but that doesn't automatically create Helldivers, because the magic comes from the interaction between all of those systems, from the limited resources to the environmental hazards, the physics, the Galactic War, the community, and the randomness. But most importantly, the player's ability to create their own stories. You can copy the mechanics, sure, but copying the mechanics doesn't guarantee the chemistry. You see, that right there might be a hot take, or it might be why this game is so successful. Helldivers 2 understands that failure can be entertaining. Every game tells you that failure is something to avoid, but Helldivers understands that failure can be content. You can fail an objective over and over again, lose your squad, miss the extraction, and you can accidentally destroy your own team and still have a fantastic time doing all of this, and this is incredibly difficult to replicate. The game doesn't need you to be perfect, the game just needs you to participate, and this is why the game is so fun. Seriously, you can go months without touching this game, and immediately you come back, you will understand what you are doing. The fundamentals are simple, but the possibilities are endless, and that is the sweet spot every multiplayer game should be chasing. Easy to understand, difficult to master, and endlessly entertaining when things go wrong. After everything Helldivers 2 has already gone through and been through, the war isn't over. As of August 11th, 2026, Arrowhead is still actively expanding the game, and the next major development is particularly interesting. The Illuminae are set to return alongside a new threat teased through the game's ongoing narrative. A Warhammer 40k crossover is also arriving alongside that update, and whether every future decision works almost perfectly is beside the point, because the foundation is still there. The sandbox is there, and the community is still going strong, and most importantly, the war never ends. So why is Helldivers 2 still unmatched? It is not because it has the most content or the best graphics, and it certainly isn't because every update has been perfect. It is because Helldivers 2 understands that players do not need to be constantly rewarded to have fun. Sometimes they just need a great sandbox, give them powerful tools, and give them enemies worth fighting, and get the freak out of the way. And this is exactly what Helldivers 2 does perfectly. It creates the situation and you create your own stories, and this is why the game has such a strange identity. It is incredibly polished and completely ridiculous at the same time. It is a serious military shooter where soldiers scream about democracy, and it is a cooperative game where your biggest threat can sometimes be the guy standing beside you. It is a powerful fantasy where your character is completely disposable, and it is a live service game where some of the best content comes from simply playing the same basic mission with different people. It is a multiplayer shooter where the most important progression systems isn't always what is sitting inside the menus, it is the memories you collect along the way, the stories you tell, the people you meet, and the disasters you survive. This is Helldivers 2, and this is why I think calling it another live service game completely misses the point, because Helldivers 2 doesn't feel like a machine designed to keep you playing. It feels like a toy box, a dangerous, ridiculous, explosive toy box, where the game devs have given you the keys to the kingdom. So grab your weapons, load your stratagems, call in your friends, and whatever you do, please check where you are throwing that orbital strike. And as always, for Super Earth and for democracy, and most importantly, for the love of God, don't kill the entire squad. But hey, that's just me. Let me know what you think about Helldivers 2. What do you really think about this game design? What do you think about everything so far? The design, the missions, the content, the failures, the democracy, the propaganda, everything. And I'll be waiting for you guys in the comment section. Please, if you enjoyed this video, kindly hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell icon so you can get notified when I upload videos like this. And until next time, peace and love.
incredible.